Okay, so we're back for another evening. Yesterday finished 1500 meter swim as a race. Didn't quite go to plan. It was okay. We got the job done. It was finished. Time wasn't quite what we were looking for, but hey, I don't really focus on those swims. So it was just a bit of fun. It's all good. One issue is now is everything's hurting. I for some reason have knots under my armpits, and just the level of strain right down the neck, right over the shoulders, is actually insane. I've never had this before. I thought I might have been getting ill recently, but it's just right down the sides. I don't know if when I was doing turns or trying to look forward or over rotating, but something's jarred over the weekend, which is not the best place to be. So, first things first, obviously, we're going to have to level everything out, try and just stretch it all off. And then I think it's going to be another just easy, slow session today, just try and get that recovery in, because if I just start aggravating the nervous system, I mean, it's like 8:30 at night or something. Don't really want to be full sending it, waking myself up just before I go to sleep. So to begin with, just gonna come to the floor, just some basic stretching. Oh, it's one of those where it feels okay. It's just whenever I do anything, that's when it's not okay. Um, I think I've just overdone it last 2 weekends, so I don't think this evening is really gonna be like anything crazy. Um, Still get some stretches in, but it's one of those where if the muscles already feel fatigued, you kind of just try and stretch them off, try and keep them long, but you don't want to strain them where they need to recover. Still need to get my head around how that would work, because obviously any sort of stressors you put into the muscle needs time to recover, but if they're fatigued, the best thing to do is let them rest. But then if they rest for too long, they'll seize up. So my feeling this evening for this one is just do a couple of stretches that kind of feel okay and that can hold for a little bit longer, and then we'll see where we can go from there. So to begin with, just forward fold. Again, just using a block. Hips are going to be tight this evening. I can already feel. I think when I woke up this morning, I was sleeping with my knees in the air just to ease the lower back. So for this movement, it's always the thing in yoga when you try to stretch or get into position that's uncomfortable. Your shoulders have a tendency to rise up to your ears or roll forward. Appreciate, obviously you try and get that full length, but you actually benefit more in this stretch if you can pull your shoulders back, because that reduces the length the back is very slightly, and you'll notice as you pull the shoulder blades back, it'll actually increase the intensity of the stretch, and at the same time kind of begin to introduce that better posture. What I find, I remember when I first started doing this, was there's so many muscles in the body you don't actually realize you have a connection with. So for instance, pulling the shoulder blades back, it was something when I first started out I kind of wasn't able to do because I never consciously needed to. I wasn't until a few sessions I could actually feel the shoulders kind of going forward and back, and it was an interesting sensation, and one that arguably kind of helps the posture the most, because it just prevents you from getting, especially that kind of gooseneck sort of look where you've got that long neck kind of leaning forward. When you're standing up tall and straight, if you bring your shoulders down and back, it'll naturally lift your head up higher and keep your neck straight rather than pivoting forward, which obviously we do 90% of the time when we're in front of a screen. So the stronger we can make that, hopefully the longer we can go before we end up kind of with that hunch at the base of the neck. Oh, I'm gonna have to do something to the neck here. So there's even just some subtle movements you can do. Just as long as you can really, with a lot of the recovery stuff, some of the stuff will feel like yoga, some of the stuff won't. But in my head, as long as you're basically slowing down and taking your time to basically unwind, for a better term, is it doesn't matter really if it's a strict yoga posture with a Sanskrit name, a fancy way of doing the pose, a very strict, narrow way of doing it, and some really bendy lass showing it in a video. As long as you can kind of feel something happening and you're easing into a movement, I think a lot of the time that's all you need. So, for instance, here is obviously the neck's feeling a little bit strained. It's a little bit stretched out. So even just taking one hand over side of the head, just slowly taking the head over to your shoulder. Try and get your ear to your shoulder. Not applying a lot of pressure. You don't want to crink your neck, but just enough to start to feel a stretch down the side. Lifting up nice and tall. Arm maybe touching the floor here. Pressing in to try and keep yourself level. I think especially if you're starting out, a lot of these won't feel great to begin with, but after a couple of years I'm finding actually these are the ones I prefer, because you've got the benefit of just being able to target exactly where you need to be or exactly the area you want to work on, and you realize how little effort it needs to be able to start. You don't need to take an hour out of your day. You could potentially even do this in the office if you really wanted to. Might look a little bit strange if you're in the bullpen. There's nothing stopping you, even in your car. Just sitting up straight, just taking a little stretch. And chances are, if I was managed to get the camera on the side of my neck here, you'd actually see the fibers below the skin. So from here, what we can do, just a little bit of dynamics, is if you sit up straight, just to keep a little bit of movement, make sure you've got full mobility. You can start just by taking your nose, just making tiny little circles, and then slowly growing them out. And you're just taking your time to just use the full range of motion in the neck. Obviously not going fast enough to get yourself feeling dizzy or anything, but you'll feel that full movement, and actually that's feeling really good right now. Whoa. Obviously all this will just depend on how you feel. If you're naturally quite a loosey-goosey person, this might not do very much for you. But for me, it's the difference between feeling like you're made of gravel and feeling like you're made a little less of gravel. Does that even make sense? Not sure. So you can work on both sides. Obviously you can bring the head forward. Still, you want to keep up nice and tall. There's no point rounding the shoulders and rounding out the back, because the lower back will compensate, and you won't get that full advantage. Whereas if you're up, depending on how you feel, if you're naturally quite a loosey goosey person, this might not do very much for you. But for me, it's the difference between feeling like you're made of gravel and feeling like you're made a little less of gravel. Does that even make sense? Not sure. So you can work on both sides. Obviously, you can bring the head forward. Still, you want to keep up nice and tall. There's no point rounding the shoulders and rounding out the back, because the lower back will compensate, and you won't get that full advantage. Whereas if you're up nice and tall and you lean the head forward, you've got the advantage of that weight of the head. You'll be able to feel on the neck exactly that weight, because your head's quite heavy. So the more you lean it forward, the more strain you'll put on the back, and the higher up and the more aligned it is, the less pressure will be there. So for the purposes of this, even though I've been talking a lot about kind of not using a gooseneck, if we lean forward but keep our shoulders back and upright, you'll feel a nice long stretch across the back of the neck. And vice versa. Try and stay nice and tall here, but maybe looking up, you'll actually feel where certain things are maybe tight down the front of the neck. And even this, after yesterday, I can actually feel it in my traps. Okay. The next one's the shoulders. So shoulders are a little bit of a tricky one because they're quite a big muscle group. However, they're right at a joint. So what you need to do is be able to stretch and twist, because our shoulders have quite a lot of range of movement. I mean, you can do 360 degrees this way, 360 degrees forward and back. You can then open and close the arm with the shoulder. So for this, a lot of the time I'll end up using maybe a bind to help. So one of them is taking one leg forward out of the Ashtanga series, 1 foot in front, one arm in front, dropping the thumb, bringing it round. Same with the other arm, taking a bind behind, and then applying pressure to the arm that's gone around the leg to help push you forward. And then you should hopefully feel, especially on the outer of the shoulder, I generally find across the outside of the shoulder, that you can get a nice long stretch across there. And take it to the other side. I don't know if getting that on the mic, but every time I do these, the sound of the cracking that come from my shoulders is unreal. Sounds almost like pieces of wood popping. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not too sure. However, the level of looseness you receive afterwards just feels absolutely fantastic. So with this pose, potentially the idea is you'll be able to lean forward and get your head down to your leg if you can lean straight enough. However, it's always interesting when you try to aim for something like that. It won't be necessarily the main muscle groups you think that will hold you back on this. So for instance here, it's like my shoulders are tight. However, to stop me coming forward, it's actually the tightness in the hip, and especially around the outside edges of the hip that actually stop me folding forward far enough. It's interesting when you do these postures, you can actually find secretly where secret tight spots are that you actually need to focus on that you may not think will be the critical part of the pose. And it just goes to show really how everything in the body is integrated and moves together as one. So that's more of a linear bind. Other one we have, potentially if we can do it this evening, is taking across the body, and then if we can, taking a bind, maybe looking over our back shoulder. I'm not going to lie, I made the mistake of eating my dinner before this. One piece of advice I could give when you're doing any sort of stretching or mobility work is not necessarily do it on an empty stomach, but do it on a very light stomach. I've not done a lot of Pilates, but I've been told it's very similar to there, is because there's a lot of rotation, crossing over, movement, ab work, is you don't want to be having a heavy stomach doing these sort of movements. The level of discomfort can throw you off pretty easily. Oh, never know if I'm good at those poses or if it's just 'cause I got longer kind of gibbon like arms. It does make those kind of postures a little bit easier. If you've got shorter arms, sometimes they just physically won't come round far enough. Especially, if you're naturally a thicker person. The one thing you could do, cheat it out, is to use a strap, and then that allows you to still take the bind without your hands becoming far enough to touch. And what you can do over time is, if you grab each side of the belt, is over time just slowly trying to wrap it around your hands, and it'll just slowly get you closer and closer together until maybe one day your hands are just about there. So you could just be like a meter away, and then next time you do it, you're able to do one wrap, come down, 90 centimeters, keep coming down, and with each wrap, you just get a little bit closer each time. So the swim yesterday, it went all right. I wouldn't have said it was my proudest swim in the world. Feel like I'm still recovering from the other competition I had the week before. This is generally just a fun one I've started doing every year. It's just myself and a mate. We tend to have a competition, turnabout every year, see who can take it. So it began. This must be the 4th year now. So the first year we swam it. We're both, for our age group, originally swimming for last place. Neither of us wanted to do it or had any inclination of how we would do. Luckily, the people who were in front of us in that age group didn't bother to turn up. So it turned out it was just the two of us in the race. So thankfully, I took it. Walked away with a cheeky little gold medal, and that put me 1-0 up. The following year, I will make my excuses. I think a day or two before, I had just come back from a 3-week trip in Australia, which, when you're traveling back in that direction, I believe that's the annoying route where you end up with the bad jet lag at the back of it. So 3 weeks of not training, not necessarily eating the best food in the world, or at least the healthiest food in the world, jumping back into the pool, swimming cold, going straight into a 1500 was not the best idea. And suffice to say, I did not win that year. So that took us to a draw. Year 3, which would have been last year, we ended up in lane side by side, which was interesting. And we made the mistake of psyching each other out on the blocks. And then when we dived in, my mate had been telling me all day that he was going to go out as hard. No, what was he? He was going to go out and pace and then build it up and go hard round about halfway. So I kept holding on when I first dived in, went out a bit faster, try and see if he'd start coming back on me. And luckily for me, unfortunately for him, I think his legs blew out on that, and I took that one quite safely for the win, so that put me up 2-1. And then this year, we went in it together. Not my proudest race. And again, I think there's supposed to be a lad there who is definitely a lot better than the two of us. Didn't bother to turn up for the race, so it was between us two for gold again. And give him his due, he took that one off me, so I believe that's a gold and a silver each, and 2 first places each. So we're neck and neck again, which makes next year all the more interesting. However, he has had the quicker times than me, but we won't factor that in for the moment. But I could feel probably from after a third of the swim was the shoulders were starting to feel a little bit narrowed. Now, if you've done a lot of gym work or a lot of swim gymnastics, anything that involves kind of repetitive strain in the shoulder, you'll know exactly what narrowed shoulders feel like, and it's not the most comfortable position to be in. I tend to feel it quite a lot, so I didn't take it as anything. I was just thinking, it's a bit of tightness from the week before. It won't be too much. However, I think looking in hindsight, there was probably a bit more to it than I thought. Just thinking, it'll just be tight shoulders, just bear through it. But obviously today, with it being the neck, the shoulders, the outside of the shoulders, the back of the triceps, and the traps, makes me think that there was a little bit more to play than I thought. The only thing I can think is obviously when you're moving for quite a bit, obviously you've got all the blood flowing through the body, a little bit of adrenaline, you can kind of switch those things off. However, anything you ignore generally comes back to bite you afterwards. So this is just kind of one of the things where realistically, even when you look at professional athletes and you see them at their highest, there is this realistic aftermath that they have afterwards, and by no means am I putting myself in that category. However, when you see their highlights, whether it's you see it live or on a highlight reel on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever, is what you probably don't see is the next 2-3 days afterwards of them doing full recovery and rehab work, because something's starting to feel a little bit too niggly to ignore. And unfortunately, with the speeds, the weights, etc., that everyone does these days, it is a common side effect. It's something we need to learn to handle better, and it is what is needed in order to get that edge on your competition. But it is that recovery in the aftermath that's equally as important. So it may not feel like it all the time, but that's generally because we've grown up as kids where kids generally, as a rule of thumb, can bounce back from quite a lot. They're relatively malleable. But as we reach adulthood, we become a lot more rigid, which only worsens as we get older. There's very few people in their 60s who don't feel very brittle compared to their 20s. But what I find is kind of, it's like a silver lining in it, is kind of as you get older, you kind of learn that you're still learning more about your body. So obviously the ego before, when you were younger, is, oh, I don't need this, I'll just ignore it. I'm young, I'm vibrant, I'm energetic, I can take the whole world on. And then as you get older, you start to learn that, you need to be doing your warm-ups before you start moving. You need to be cooling down and doing something light and easy instead of just doing a hard workout, stopping and leaving. You need to be doing stuff around the side. Your body needs support. It can't just keep trudging on. And whether or not, I don't know, it could maybe be that the reason we're having to do this now, and everyone generally by the time they hit their 30s is feeling a little bit sore and used up, is because they've not been taking those steps back when they were quote unquote feeling their prime. So a lot of people you hear that used to be they'll always have a story that they used to be really good at X or really good at Y, but then they took, I don't know, like an injury, or life just caught up with them, or X, Y, and Z. They don't perform the way they used to. It's probably not all the time. Granted, there is quite a lot of unforeseen issues that can come through, but I think a lot of the time it's just not realizing that you can't just go from not to full competition level at the flick of a switch. I mean, if the professionals keep themselves primed at all times, the rest of us, work a 9-to-5 job, busy lives out with that job as well. Maybe not all the necessary sleep that we should be getting. Quite a lot of people living on caffeine instead of hydration. And 30, 40, 50 years is a long time to be around. And it's also a long time to be neglecting something. So if you looked at anything around your house or your garden, you leave something alone for 40, 50 years, untended, unnurtured, it's going to look pretty weathered after 50 years. And I've got to be honest, your body is no different. But anyway, that's my take on it. It's just interesting as I get older, the more you learn. I don't necessarily know if that's because I'm getting older as a side effect, or if it's because I haven't done these steps when I was younger and I'm beginning to feel the side effect of that now. It'd be interesting to know what everyone else's thoughts are on it. I think the common place is to kind of react to these things. So as you get older, you react to feeling sore, and because you're reacting to it, the easy response is, oh, it's because I'm getting older, I'm feeling X. Whereas if you took these steps earlier on and carried through, then it could be you could be at the same position as you are now, but you feel a hell of a lot better. But you almost kind of need to do it wrong in order to learn what you need to do sometimes. I guess it's like when you're a kid, it's trial and error. You need to find what the error is before you can fix it. Otherwise, you'll never actually learn. I think the same also goes for like the workplace, for instance, where you don't learn when a project goes right. You learn when a project's an absolute dumpster fire and you've got to fight your way out of it. Which is a weird way to finish this video, but it's food for thought for a Sunday night. See you later.